Want to create a fuzz pedal that sounds incredible but looks cool too? Let's turn a humble tobacco tin into a boutique tone machine. Stay around, because after the sound sample we're going to reveal how you can win this pedal for absolutely free. I was just about to unbox this and I thought, why not do it on camera? So here we go, the Hubcap John Fuzz. He did say he was going to send me some stuff. Oh wow, he sent me a fuzz, so this is awesome. I'll definitely be putting my my fuzz that I'm building right now against the one that he's just given me at the end for the little demo. He makes the best pedals ever, so yeah. And I love the little warship firing off some missiles, is it? Or maybe that's just my bad eyesight, maybe it's a bit of smoke. Anyway, moving on. So what we got? Oh cool, look at that. The size of that tag board. It's like a tiny tag board but smaller. That's epic. I wonder if I can squeeze a Kossoff drive on one of them. That'd be awesome for little enclosures. Right, so here's, I'm guessing, the fuzz for me to build, yeah. So John said that he was going to put some components in there, some extra old stuff for me. That's cool. We got our pots for the fuzz. What's this? Oh, a little sticker. Awesome, that's going on my toolbox. I've got a little collection going. Epic. Well, I have printed out the instructions for this. I won't be showing them on camera just because, just out of respect for John, keep his instructions to himself. Right, let's put that to one side. I'll remove all the stuff he's put in there for me. What's this? I'm guessing this is the fuzz that he's made for me, which is class. For those who don't know, most pedal builders, including myself, I'll have like a set of pedals that their friends have built them type thing. They're worth more than the sum value of them. Oh yes, look at that. Well, you've got to look inside, haven't you? Yeah. Oh, come on, look at that. Get in, I can't wait to fire this up. So I'll fire this up with the one that I'm building now. That's class. Right, so we'll put that to one side and we'll focus on, this is the one that we're building. So here's the parts for it. Right, pots, PCB, I'll remove all that other stuff. Love it. There we go. Right, let me get the instructions and we'll see what we're doing. Just check out how awesome these instructions are. John is like the master of aesthetics, let me tell you. I think I won't mind me showing this first page, but obviously there's plenty of pages. This is probably the most comprehensive instructions I've seen on how to build a fuzz face that you can imagine. I highly recommend anyone having a go at one of these. Get in touch with Hubcap John and see if you can get this kit. In fact, I'll put a link to his page in the description below. But just out of respect from him, or for him should I say, we'll keep them out the way there. Now what we got? We've got our enclosure. We have a stomp switch, so it's a smaller type stomp switch than what I would use, which is no doubt to fit in this type of enclosure. And it's got the PCB already on it. So we put that to one side, and then we've got our two pots, which is a 100k and a 1k. So that's different already. If I'm building a fuzz, I use a 500k and a 1k, so that's interesting. We've got our strip board. Now this is interesting. The strip board itself is actually cut the opposite way from what I would do it. And I'm assuming John's done this so then there's less splits in the tracks, or no splits in the tracks as the case may be. That's interesting. And then here's our components. Let's have a look what we got. Orange drop caps. These are real high quality caps. Some smaller values. What we got for the electrolytic. Not sure on that brand, but that's the brand if anyone's interested. These look pretty good. And transistor wise, we are going with BC337 for this one. And I'm assuming this will be the same. Yeah, BC337. Not a transistor I've used before, but it'll be interesting to see what we got. And then this looks like a Bourne's potentiometer. That's interesting. And then we've got some resistors. First on the list, it says to add our pots. So we've got a 100k pot, which is our volume pot, and our 1k pot, which is our gain or fuzz pot. On the drawing, it shows that our volume pot goes on the left hand side, like so, and he's handily marked out where they go, and our fuzz pot goes on the right hand side. I really do like these alpha pots, by the way. And I tell you what, one thing I have shown in my videos a few times is how I use these by creating a hook, and I don't put them straight into the board. Well, this is why they have them tags on them there, is because they do actually go straight into a Vero board or a PCB. This is the correct way of using them, which clearly I don't do. So now if I put that like that, and then I can give it a solder. There's pretty much 100% chance that I'm going to miss a step or not follow the instructions of some kind and absolutely mess this up. Sorry, John, if you're watching me. I can't help myself. I'm a nightmare, I know. Okay, so now we're on to the resistors. And to figure out what's going on, I'm going to use my trusty Fluke 101. As ever, bloody love this thing. It's got more sentimental value at this point than actual value, I suppose. And what the first two resistors we are going to fit, if I double check, that would have been handy, wouldn't it? So if I look here, the first two resistors we're going to fit is a 330 ohm and a 33k. So that's what we're looking for. There's our 330 ohm and our 33k. There's 100k, so we don't need that yet. I'll put it to one side. And I'm guessing this is going to be it, because the other two should be 1 meg input and output anti-pop resistors. And that's a 10k, maybe not. Okay, so maybe 33k and 330 ohm. Right, so there's 330 ohm. Good. They're definitely 1 meg drop in resistors. We'll put them to one side. That one is a 10k. And I think this one was 100k, but it doesn't look like 100k to me, so maybe I was measuring it wrong. Yeah, there's 100k. Right, clearly I've dropped out a resistor. Let me go and get a 33k and we'll carry on. Okay, so I've had a little look through my stash, and luckily my buddy Warren sent me a massive pile of components. I mean, it was ridiculous how many components. Thank you very much if you're watching me. And in there were these tiny little 33k resistors. So that one's 32.68. That's as close as I can get. I'm going to use that one. So firstly, it says to add them in. The 330 ohm comes from this pin here. Let's see, what? Oh no, this one here. And it has 4 open holes below it. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it goes in here. So because I'm not too au fait of this, I mean, you could bend these the normal way I do it with my snips and bend them perfectly and get them in, but because I'm not too au fait with the circuit, I'm just going to follow it ad hoc and put them through as I see fit. So it's 1, 2, 3.
5 hours later.
1, 2, 3 spaces left, and then it hits the tag, which it does. So there we go. And then I'm going to lie that flat there like that. What am I doing? Look at this. I'm rushing and I made a mistake. So I was actually fitting that to the wrong side. Okay, so the 330 ohm resistors going in first. It goes in this line here, 3 from the end, and there's 4 spaces, and then it goes in again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it goes in like so. And now I know there should be 3 spaces left before it goes in the same column as this tag. So 1, 2, 3, yes it does. That means I've got it in the right place. So I'm just going to give them a little bend out so then it doesn't drop out. Then we're on to our 33k, which goes in exactly the same but stops 1 short. I think regular viewers by now will be quite used to my random tag babble when I start talking about holes and one short and all that rubbish. Right, there's them in place. Now I'm going to solder them in and give the ends a snip. So to do so, I'm going to wet my tip. I'm actually running out of solder, would you believe? I get my solder from a place called Somerset Solders, and they're just sending me some new stuff, so disaster. I don't know how I've let that happen. Well, I do know it's because it's been Christmas and I haven't been looking at what I'm using particularly. And there we go. There's them in place. Now if I take my snips and just make sure that none of the legs are overlapping into the next tag along, because that would be disastrous. There's nothing like building a kit from one of your friends if you're going to mess it up as well. There we go. There's our first two resistors in. So our instructions tell us on the next bit that we're going to be adding in a 10NF cap and a link. So first things first, 10NF. Now this one here is a 1 UF, 1 microfarad. So that's a large one. It's got to be one of these two. And if we look at it, this one says 0.33, so it's not likely to be that. And this one says 0.01, which is 10NF. Even though we know that this capacitor is a 10NF because it says it on it, I'm still going to test it because I test all my capacitors. I use old stuff, so you can never really tell. It says here that this is a 10.58 NF capacitor. There's no ESR reading, so this seems to be a good capacitor. Fantastic. These things are so useful, especially if you're using the vintage components and stuff. If you want one of these, I shall leave an Amazon affiliates link in the description. There's no extra charge to yourself, but I do get a little bit of a kickback, and it does support the show and help me buy these awesome kits. Even though I have to say, I didn't buy this kit. John sent me it just to build for a bit of fun. Okay, so this cap comes from this row here, and it stretches right the way across to the end here. So that's quite a distance. To get it to go that far, I'm going to have to straighten out the legs, and I do that with my flat nose pliers. Now this bit here, you can actually destroy the caps, especially if you're using like the old tropical fish caps, because they tend to disintegrate when you fiddle about with them. This one isn't too bad, but just be careful when you're doing this. And then if I bend both the legs out, it should reach from here to here, which it does. So all I'm going to do is turn the ends down a very slight amount. So I'll just pinch it with my snips, turn it down, and it should go through. There you go. And then the other side, I can simply use my snips to grab hold of it at the right point. It's a bit fiddly here, trying to do it on camera is a bloody nightmare. Anyway, so if I hold it with my snips here, I can bend it down at that mark, and it should just drop straight in, which really is how I should have fitted the resistors, but I'm really lazy. These caps are non-polar, so it doesn't matter which way round they go in. There we go. And then if I solder that in place, as ever with these links, I do highly recommend that you save your component legs, all your little offcuts, and then you can use them for the links. However, I'm using this stuff, which is just some solid core wire. There is an affiliates link for this also, and for all of this stuff that I use down in the description. So I just take some off. Now I know that this split is just basically joining two tags that are right next to each other. So it's one further along than our resistors, and it goes into the tag next to it. So here. And now if I just double check from the edge of it here, 1, 2 spaces, and then it goes in, and then there should be 4 empty spaces this side. 1, 2, 3, 4. There. I do highly recommend that when you're going through these builds, any sort of aero build, that you count either side of every component that you put in. There's nothing worse than soldering something into these things and then not being able to get another component in, or trying to unsolder it. It's a bloody nightmare. Right, let's wet the tip and get this soldered in. There we are. I'd say we're making progress there. Next up, we've got our trim pot. This will be for biasing one of the transistors. So on our drawing, it shows us that we're putting the adjustment screw to the left hand side. I'm not sure that matters, but I'm just going to follow it exactly. And it goes in the same leg as our resistors on that side. So if I hold that in place and just twist the outer legs out a little bit, it should hold it firm up against the body, which it does. And I'll just give that a solder in now. As ever with these trim pots, these are one of the things that can be affected by heat. So when you're soldering, try not to hang about on them for too long. But don't be scared to get a good joint. It's so weird when I say that, because I'm saying don't hold the soldering iron on for too long. But also don't be scared to hold it on. It's kind of a feel thing. You get used to it after a while. Okay, there we are. Next is going to be another link, which I'm going to use my wire for again. And all we're doing is linking two of the legs on the pot together, which is these two here. So if I take my snips to hold this in, just drop straight in there. There we are. And I can solder that in place and we're good to go. Next up, we have our 100 PF cap, and that just drops in right next to, so it's in the same sort of level as our 10NF cap, but it drops into the end leg of our trim pot and the tag next to it, or the column next to it. I have tested this cap to make sure that it's the right value, and it is indeed. So if I solder that in place, I've got to say these instructions for this kit are fantastic. It's really enjoyable just to not think and just follow along for a change. There you go, one of Hello Sailor Joe's favourite pastimes, not thinking. Okay, so next we're going to move on to our electrolytic. And if I check our instructions, the positive side is going to go in the same row here as our fuzz center pin or wiper, and the negative side is going to go in the same column, as our outside wiper here. Now there's two ways of doing this. We can just split the legs open a bit and slide it in and force it down. Probably not the best way. Or we can do it the proper way and bend one of the legs out, which will be the negative leg. Remember, when you're using these, the negative leg is the one with the band going down it. It's also shorter than the positive leg. So this goes in right here, and then all I'm going to do is take my snips and just bend this leg here, so then it goes into the hole without much hassle. That's probably the best way of doing these. The way that John's laid out this kit, it really doesn't matter whereabouts you put the components. I'm assuming from a circuit standpoint, maybe it does for noise, I don't know. But yeah, it's pretty decent kit really. So if I just solder that negative leg in and then have a look and make sure that it's straight, which it is. Let's get the positive in too. This is probably the best way of doing a strip board, Vero board, Fuzz Face. It really is well laid out. Not that I'm surprised. I sound surprised there, but I'm not, because Hubcap John, if anyone doesn't know, is like one of the best designers going for like artwork and stuff like that. Some of his pedals are pretty unreal. So next we've got, okay, so this is going to be an interesting one. we've got a 680 NF and a 100k resistor. So we can measure out our 100k, not a problem. And our 680 NF, I don't see a 680 NF.
2,000 years later.
Okay, so I haven't got a 680 NF cap. I'm going to use this 330 NF. Why not? I'm assuming this will just give us less bass. In fact, it will just give us less bass. So, sounds good to me. It goes in the second row along, or second column along, and it has a space of four rows underneath it. So if I slide it in here and then count out 1, 2, 3, 4, it's going to go in just here, which should be one after our double link, our little link here, which is correct. Now, because there's going to be another component going in this leg, what I'm going to do is right now I'm just going to solder in this side, just to hold that in place while I'm trying to squeeze in our 100k resistor. Right. So here's our 100k resistor that we measured before. This thing goes into the column of this pin on the fuzz pot. So if we give it a little bend over, first things first, we're going to get it in this hole. If we can make some space for it. This is where using massive components is no good, because you never get it in there. Right, okay, it's too fiddly for me to get that in there. So what I'm going to do is, and I don't advise that you do this, I'm going to simply bend one leg over, fit it where it's got to go in this column here. Then I'll tack solder that in place. Tack solder, is that a thing? Don't know. Certainly is with welding and brazing or whatever. There you go.
A few inches later.
Right, once that's in place, which it isn't, brilliant. Once that's in place, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to solder the two legs together, the cap and the resistor. And then if I snip off the excess, that's them two joined together, and once I solder this in place, that is the circuit made the way that it's supposed to be. But I just couldn't squeeze both of them components in the same hole. We'll put that down to me being rubbish at strip board or Vero board, whatever you want to call it. Not very good at it, but there you go. Does the job. Next we're moving on to the transistors. So, first things first, I'm going to have a little look and see which one of these is the lowest gain. And I'm going to put that in Q1. Now, with these silicon transistors, they're all pretty stable. So you find that they're very, very, very close to each other. And it doesn't really matter. But because I'm testing them anyway, I might as well just see which one's the lowest gain. Why not? And of course, the battery's running out on my tester, I said there. So it's an NPN silicon transistor, which we know. That'll give us the pin out. And the current gain is 107 HFE. That's amazing for an NPN silicon. Usually they're about 300 odd. So that's really good. So 107 for that one. And then this one, I do recommend getting one of these DCA 55 testers. It literally changed my world. As far as fuzz pedals go, or like range masters, or any of them vintage finicky circuits, you really do need one of these. And this one is 260 HFE. So I'm going to put this one as Q2. Right, let's see. So the blue is the collector, the green is the base, and this one's the emitter. If I look at our drawing, I can see that the collector goes to the left hand side and the emitter goes to the right hand side. So it is that way round. So blue is the collector and that goes to the left. Okay, this one goes in line, so then the far right hand leg goes into the row with the fuzz pot. And they go into sequential columns next to each other right there. Now I'm just going to solder one of them legs in, just to hold that in place while I fit the other one. So our other transistor, I should have really I mean, for the pin out, I should have really noted the pin out, and the pin out will be the same as this transistor here. However, I'm still going to test it because you never know. If you know, sometimes transistors can be labelled up as one thing and actually be something else, especially if you're getting them from like China or somewhere like that, which, you know, a lot of us do because you don't know that you're getting it. Right. So for our Q1 transistor, it needs to go emitter, base, collector. So our red is the emitter, which is the left hand side. Green is the base, center. Blue is the collector. There. So our this transistor wants to go the opposite way round to the one that we've just fitted in. And on my drawing, which if you buy this kit, you'll definitely have, there's two spaces, 1, 2, and then this transistor goes in. There, like so. What I like to do is just get them roughly about the right height, solder one of the legs in, and then you can manipulate them to match. Or not, as the case may be. Right, now we've got them started off, we can straighten them up, make sure they're even, and then what I advise is turning it side on, so then your soldering line's coming from this sort of angle, so you're not going in between the tags, in between the legs, sorry. And before you solder your transistors, another good thing, clean your soldering iron. This stuff costs like £6, and look how shiny that tip is now. Ready for war. Right. I'm just going to go ahead and solder one leg on this transistor, and then one leg on this transistor. And then I'll go back to this one, and then back down to this one. The reason being is, there's less heat going into the transistor at any one time. There's a little gap in between. Doesn't really matter, but you might as well do it like that if you're there anyway. Clip all them off, and there's our board pretty much there, I think. Okay, so this next bit's a bit of a interesting part for me because I don't do things in this manner, so that's good. You need to take some bare wire, and I do recommend getting this stuff. It's great stuff. And then this wire will come round the back of this pot, round here, round the back of this pot, and then into this column right here. So from here, round the back of both pots, back and back on itself. Now, I'm sure you're meant to fashion this into shape first and then solder it in, but what I'm going to do is something completely different. Of course I am. I'll solder this end in, then I'll manipulate the wire around. I'm assuming this is to air out the pots. I'm not too au fait with this, but I'm going to follow the instructions to a T, and then I can't be wrong, I suppose. And then this goes in to the column next to our pot, so just here like that. If I bend that there, right. goes in there. Perfect. Solder that in place. And then I'll just take the excess off. There. Seems good enough for government work to me. And our kit actually says, congratulations, you've finished the board. Get on. So there we go. Next. Right. What are we doing next? It says to get out our jacks, which is this board here. I really like these cliff jacks, but I very rarely use them because I don't know why. I need to start using these more often. First things first, it says to fit in our 1 meg resistors. And luckily enough, I've actually stopped and read it properly because it says at the end of it there, do not solder in place. 100% I would have soldered them in. So our 1 meg resistors are going to go across the pots like this. Next, it says to attach bare wire across these pins here, the top end pins. Now, for those who don't know, these cliff jacks, when you plug in a jack to it, it takes these 3 pins out of the circuit, it lifts them off. And so the only ones that are connected is this here, which is the live, the end one. That is our signal carrier. This is the switch component. So if you're adding like a, plug it in and it switches the circuit on. But mostly I ignore that. And then this bit here is the ground. So what we're doing here is we're adding a 1 meg resistor between ground, which is going to be all these 4 pins joined together, and our live signal on the input and the output. And the reason we do that is because capacitors aren't always amazing. So a capacitor's job, just a quick one, I promise not to be too boring. A capacitor's job is to pass AC signal through but block DC signal. So your AC signal in this case is your guitar sine wave, that's AC. So it'll allow that through. And what it does is it blocks DC from going across it. And obviously DC in your circuit, you want to keep in your circuit and not on your signal. That's why we have an input and output capacitor. It's not the only reason, but it's one of the reasons. But no capacitor is perfect. So what happens is, over time, it slowly leaks DC to the other side of it. And you have a build up of DC here. And then when you switch your pedal on, you get that pop. And that's what the anti-pop resistor is doing. So when you switch a 3-pole double throw switch on, true bypass, and sometimes you get that pop, it's because the capacitor is passing DC across it. But this 1 meg resistor, what that does is it bleeds that DC to ground. Now 1 meg's high enough that it won't affect the sound whatsoever. But when the pedal's plugged in and turned off, and that DC is bleeding across, it's just getting bled straight to ground. And that's what they're for. Anyway, next step is to add in a bare wire across them 4 terminals. Next, we're going to fit the battery snap. So what I like to do is I take a battery, usually a used battery with no voltage in it, but today we've got a new one. Fit our battery snap to it and place it into wherever the battery is going to go, right here in this case. That way we know that it will definitely fit and the wires are definitely going to be long enough because we've got the battery in place. On our kit, this earth, or the negative side, I keep getting told off for that. On a ship, everything's earth. You don't talk about negative, we just say earth. So apologies to all my electronic geeks who pick me up for that pretty much every episode I do. And this is going to run round to our switched input. So this is the input jack here and our switched pin on the input. So I'm just going to run that round underneath. I'll give it a bit of extra wire so then people can get the the battery snap in and out. Give that a snip with my snips and then remove just the outer sheath of that and give that a tin before I fit it to the lug. Now to fit it to this lug, all I'm going to do is make a hook with the end of it as ever, and then when I hook that around the jack leg, I can just give it a squeeze and then we're going to get a good mechanical connection, and that way we're not just relying on solder to hold it in place. There we go. And if we solder that on, you have to be careful with these wires, because even a little bit of heat can melt the insulation. It's awkward. It's not like the silicone wire that I use for the actual signal wire, which is spot on. This stuff's really fragile. Right, there's our jack. Our battery in place wire to the jack. Next is attaching wires for the signal. So we've got our input wire, output wire, and our earth or negative wire. It says to cut the wires longer than you think you're going to need, as long as he actually uses color codes for this, but I'm going to use just the same color for everyone, which is going to be a little bit awkward later, but I'll you know, if I don't know which wire is which, I'll just use my multimeter to find out. So I'm going to strip and tin the ends of all these wires, and then we'll see where we've got to fit them. This stuff is so easy to use compared to, well, especially compared to that. It just, you can put loads of heat in there and it's never going to melt the outside sheathing or the insulation, which is ideal for beginners. I did used to use a company called BN Tech Go, but they're getting really hard to find now. So I found a new supplier on Amazon, and there will of course be an affiliates link to that, should you be interested. Are people getting sick of me talking about affiliates links, or would you rather I mentioned it? Or shall I just put the link in the description and people can find it if they like? I mean, it's literally up to you guys. Okay, so we've got our input and output wires, which there's our input pin, output pin, and then our earth or negative is going to come from this row here. So again, all I'm going to do, I mean, I've cut, let's face it, right, I've made a massive end there. I don't need that at all. You only need a little hook at the end like that. So I'm going to make my hook same manner, put it round the pin. I mean, you should give it a squeeze, but I've soldered a bit too much on the end of this one, so I'm just going to solder it in place there. Get on, contradicting myself. Well done, Joe. There's our earth, and then I'm going to do the same for the input and output wires. Next step is going to be to wire up our input and output and our 9 volts and ground to our circuit. So first things first is, when you're fitting your pots into your enclosure, don't forget that most of them, or some of them, have these little tags on the end that we don't use. They're basically there. There'll be an extra hole somewhere here and the tag would slot in there. It stops the pot from rotating. Great idea, but I tend not to use them in my builds, and it looks like John doesn't either. So we're going to fit this in the enclosure like so, and then tighten it on. There we go. I'm really excited to give this pedal away. I think it's always good to give back, and I really appreciate you guys watching. So if anyone's watching, stay till the end and you'll hear exactly how you can win this pedal. We'll announce the winner as ever. I'm sure I've mentioned this by now on one of the other clips, but we'll announce the winner on the Pedal Dive podcast. Hopefully we can get John on, and he can be in the process of choosing the winner. It'll be fantastic. Absolutely committed the Cardinals in there. If I was on board a warship, they would go mental. We tighten up nuts with a set of snips. Honestly, it's like, oof, it's like a cardinal sin now. Okay, so side by side them, and we want to make sure that everything reaches. Now I've just realised what I've done. I've actually got to attach. Get on. I've got to attach these wires to this board, but I've just fit the thing in. I'm going to undo them 2 screws, take them out, and then I'll be able to attach my wires to the board, because obviously I can't solder it the way it is now. Well done, Joe. Okay, so that's roughly about as much space as I need between them. So I'm going to cut the wires, running them pretty much together, and then I'll cable tie them at the end. If I was to cable tie them now, I won't be able to tell which ones go and where, because they're all the same colour. Much like John recommended that you should definitely colour code them. That would have made it easier. So if I look at my drawing, the input, which is this one here, he's got it labelled up as orange. that goes in the second column along. So if I run that there and clip it about that length, give the end a tin, second column along is right here. I can then solder that in place if I can ever get it in properly. Well done, Joe. See, this is the beauty about this kit. It's so well designed. All of the wires go in right next to each other, which means that you get one wire and loom or one wire and run, which regular viewers will know that I really like that. I would probably say that this, if you wanted to build your first pedal but didn't want to use like a quote-unquote kit where you get a PCB and, you know, it's all paint by numbers. If you wanted to build your actual own pedal, this is the best way to go about it. John's really made something special here. Okay, so with this kit you get this 3-pole double throw switch. It's all nicely earthed and done pretty spot on really. But I'm going to use one of my gold pin connectors for no other reason than it needs to be a little bit Hello Taylor effects, I suppose. There's nothing wrong with these. In fact, it's much better soldered together than I'm going to do, but there you go. At this point, you've no doubt noticed that I completely forgot to wire in the stomp switch. What am I playing at? So, if I'd have followed the step-by-step instructions provided by Hubcap John, I would have been able to notice that I weren't wiring in the stomp switch at all. Great. And maybe the choice that I made to use my own stomp switch played into that. So, my mistake. Now, let's get back to the build. Like the absolute Neanderthal that I am, I actually soldered the wires coming straight from this part of the circuit going to the board without actually attaching the switch. Well done, Joe. I'm sure people were screaming at the screen, and I'm sure John was absolutely dying, shouting at the screen then, telling me that I was messing it up. Good. So all I've done is snip them short. We're going to attach them to our switch first, and then we'll attach from our switch going to our other part of our enclosure. First two wires there are the input and output. The input is going to go to here, and the output is going to go to here. So I'll wire them in. Then we've got our live and our ground. Now obviously we don't want them to touch each other, and there is no LED in this pedal because it's a Fuzz Face battery powered. We don't want to run a battery out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this lug here and this lug here just as like a staging post on the way for these two wires going out of the thing. So I'm going to put the live going to this pin and the earth going to this pin, and then I'm going to put in another wire going from here out to the other part of the circuit, and same this side. Just using these as like a holding lug. The reason why I'm not running them straight there is because I want to run these wires along the enclosure so they look good, that's it. And then I want all the other wires to come from this switch, cable tied together, and look good going to the other thing. You could run them direct. I didn't have to snip these ones off, but there you go. Right, there's our input and output of the circuit wired up, and I've just placed the negative, or the earth, and the live just through them two lugs. They're not going to connect to anything. Now I'll run our other wires straight from here. So if I do the input first, the input's going to go from, in fact, to tell you what I'll do, I'll do these ones first. So the earth, as you can see, is not soldered in. So now if I put that second wire through there and solder it in place, as you can see, I'm just using that as like a terminal. And this, by the way, is absolutely not part of the kit. This is not how John's wired it up. But I'm going to go this way, and I'm sure he won't mind. And then I'll run this over, and it's going to go there to the earth terminal over here. Now for the live, I'm going to have to strip this and then use my hook and loop method, same way as I've done in plenty of other videos. And this is why you give it a squeeze, so then you get a good mechanical connection. There's no way it wants to pop off. Right. Next, I'm going to just go ahead and do the input and output wires, and I'll join the live to the air. I'll run all the wires the same length, so when a cable tie them, it looks nice and neat. Okay, so there we have it all wired in, and it does indeed fit in the enclosure. Happy with that. Next is going to be to bias the transistors, or the transistor. So John tells us that we switch our multimeter to volts DC. I'm going to have to plug in the input, otherwise the battery isn't part of the circuit yet. He tells us that our negative probe, which is the black probe, goes here, and our positive probe goes here. Right, so we're quite high there. We've got what, 8 volts, and then we turn this little potentiometer until we get 4.5. Of course, my insistence on not following the instructions has led me to make another mistake. I completely missed this link out, and if I'd have followed the sequential instructions step by step, as you should, I would have noticed that I haven't put this link in, and it would have probably saved me some time. Right, so when I come to bias this yet again, another mistake. Well done, Joe. Sure, people are getting used to me making mistakes now. It's because I'm building someone else's kit and I'm not reading it properly because, well, I'm male. We never read instructions. What I've missed is a jumper wire going from Q1 collector to Q2 base. Now, rather than take this all out and fit in a jumper wire, I'm just going to fit it on the outside here. But realistically, I should have just read the instructions and followed it step by step. So I wasn't getting any bias on this pot here whatsoever. I was just getting 8 volts continuous. So apologies, John, for me not reading your instructions. They're so well laid out as well. But let me go ahead and fit that. Now all I've done is added this little jumper in right. Can you see it on camera? Right there. So I've gone from the center pin of this transistor, and it needs to go to the outside pin of this one. However, rather than trying to solder 2 transistors, which is no fun, I moved up here to this 33k resistor, and I've just dropped the line in there. So you could avoid that by just reading the instructions. That would have been much more preferable. So now if we plug our input jack in to activate the power supply, we can go to volts DC. It says to put our earth lead right here and our positive lead right here. Right now we've got 2 volts. He says to change this until it reads 4.5. If I can keep the jack, the leads on. 4.5 volts. I think biasing the transistors is like the most important part of a fuzz. It took me years before I realised that, and it just didn't, like, you know, I was building fuzz faces painting by numbers. They just never sound good. Which is why back in the day, someone like Jimi Hendrix used to go into a shop and try all the fuzz faces. It's because he's looking for one with certain transistors that are biased in a certain way. And this pot that John's put in just makes it so then you can get exactly 4.5 volts, which is what you want. Or you could go over like I just have. Not that that matters. That's a tiny amount. That really won't matter. And it'll fluctuate with the signal that comes in. So there we have it. I'm going to put this together and plug it in, see what we get. As far as knobs go, I had to go with these ones. A little bit different from what John normally uses. Makes it, a bit more interesting. And as far as stickers go, I'm going to put a Hubcap John sign on there just because we're giving this away and I want people to know where the kit come from. But I'm going to add in a little bit of Hello Sailor artwork. Now I have clipped my brand name off the front just because I don't want people thinking it's my design. It seems a bit wrong to plaster Hello Sailor effects all over it when the kit come from John, but also I don't want people to mistake my shoddy work that I made that I messed about with one of John's pedals. So I'll add in the Hello Sailor effects artwork on there, and then we'll put in a bit of a Hubcap John sticker on the front as well. Now I think this looks pretty damn cool. There we are. Now let's get on to the sound sample. And now it's time for the sound sample. We're going to hear how this fuzz stacks up against the one that John sent us, and also one of my Abbey Road fuzz pedals, just for comparison. I'd like to know what you think in the comments about this build and all the mistakes I made along the way. I hope we all enjoyed the tones from them 3 fuzz pedals, and now it's time to reveal how you can win this pedal for free. All you have to do is share a short of this video and tell me why you deserve to win this pedal. The winner will be revealed on the Pedal Dive podcast live when we have Hubcap John himself on the show. I can't wait. He's going to tell us all about building pedals and his graphic design, because he is the master at it. So if you want to win this pedal, make sure that you've got your short out in time.